Jenny and her husband had been looking forward to their romantic weekend getaway for weeks. They had chosen a charming hotel in the countryside, known for its picturesque surroundings and cozy accommodations. Upon arriving, they were greeted warmly by the staff and shown to their room on the top floor. The room was spacious and well-appointed, with a four-poster bed and a large bay window that offered stunning views of the rolling hills outside. Jenny and her husband settled in for the night, tired but excited for the adventures that awaited them in the morning. As they drifted off to sleep, Jenny felt a strange sensation wash over her. It was as if someone was watching her, even though the room was completely still and silent. She tried to brush it off and closed her eyes, hoping to fall asleep soon. But then, in the middle of the night, Jenny was jolted awake by a sound. It was a soft whisper, so faint that she could barely make out the words. She turned to her husband, but he was sound asleep, snoring softly. And then, she saw the woman. The woman was standing at the foot of their bed, dressed in a Victorian gown that rustled softly as she moved. Her hair was styled in an elaborate updo, and she had a sad expression on her face. Jenny couldn't move or speak, frozen in terror as she watched the woman approach. She wanted to scream, to wake up her husband and run out of the room, but her voice was stuck in her throat. And then, as suddenly as she had appeared, the woman vanished into thin air, leaving Jenny shaking and gasping for breath. The rest of the night was a blur of nightmares and sweat-soaked sheets. Jenny and her husband woke up early, both feeling uneasy and disturbed by the events of the previous night. They tried to shrug it off, convincing themselves that it had been a bad dream, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As they made their way down to the lobby for breakfast, they stopped in front of a large photo hanging on the wall. It was the woman they had seen in their room, the one in the Victorian gown. Jenny felt a cold shiver run down her spine as she realized that the hotel staff had known about her all along. They approached the receptionist, demanding to know more about the woman in the photo. It turned out that she had been murdered in their room years ago, and the hotel had never been able to rent it out since. They had accidentally given it to Jenny and her husband, not realizing the mistake until it was too late. Jenny and her husband were horrified by what they had heard. They packed their bags immediately, not bothering to stay for breakfast, and left the hotel as fast as they could. As they drove away, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of something sinister lurking just out of sight. In the weeks and months that followed, Jenny and her husband struggled to come to terms with what had happened. They couldn't bring themselves to stay in a hotel room again, haunted by the memory of the woman in the Victorian gown. And every time they closed their eyes, they could still hear the soft whisper of her voice, echoing through the darkness. Before we move to the next story, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. The group of friends had thought they were in for a fun weekend of bonding and relaxation in the secluded cabin they rented in the woods. They had no idea that their vacation would turn into a nightmare beyond their wildest imaginations. As they settled in for the night, they heard strange noises coming from outside. At first, they thought it was just the wind, but as the noises grew louder, they realized that something was wrong. They nervously peered out the window, but saw nothing but darkness. Suddenly, they heard footsteps on the porch. They hesitated for a moment before cautiously approaching the door. When they opened it, they found no one there. The eerie silence made their skin crawl. As they turned to go back inside, the door slammed shut, and they realized that they were locked in the cabin. Panic set in as they tried to force the door open, but it wouldn't budge. They were trapped. As the night wore on, the strange occurrences became more frequent and more terrifying. They heard unexplainable voices whispering in their ears and saw shadows moving around the cabin. Every time they tried to barricade themselves inside, the door kept opening on its own, as if someone or something was trying to lure them out. Finally, they saw a figure standing outside the cabin. It was a woman with long hair, and she had a terrifying expression on her face. They screamed and tried to run, but the woman followed them, her laughter echoing through the woods. They ran deep into the woods, trying to get as far away from the cabin as possible. But the woman was relentless, and she continued to follow them, her long hair flowing behind her like tendrils of smoke. They stumbled upon an old cemetery, and the woman suddenly disappeared. As they explored the cemetery, they discovered that the woman had been buried there. They soon realized that she was the victim of a gruesome murder that had occurred years ago. Her restless spirit had been haunting the cabin and tormenting anyone who dared to stay there. The group of friends decided to perform a cleansing ritual in the cemetery, hoping to finally lay the woman's spirit to rest. But as they did, they heard the woman's voice whispering in their ears. She was angry, and she wasn't going to let them go that easily. Suddenly, the ground began to shake, and the trees around them shook violently. They felt a cold wind blow through the cemetery, and they knew that they had angered the vengeful spirit. They ran back to the cabin as fast as they could, hoping to escape her wrath. When they arrived, they found the cabin in shambles. The furniture was overturned, and the walls were covered in blood. They realized that the woman had followed them back to the cabin, and she was more furious than ever. The group of friends huddled together, trying to find a way to survive the night. They tried to call for help, but their cell phones had no signal. They were alone, and they were at the mercy of the vengeful spirit. The night seemed to go on forever, but eventually, the sun rose, and the spirit vanished. The group of friends were left traumatized and scarred, never to return to that cabin again. They had been through a nightmare that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Once upon a time, there was a loving father who tucked his young son into bed every night. The father would read his son a story, tuck him in, and wish him sweet dreams before turning out the lights and closing the door. One evening, the father completed the bedtime routine as usual, but just as he was about to leave, his son's small voice piped up from under the covers. "Dad, can you check for monsters under my bed?" the boy asked timidly. The father smiled reassuringly and knelt down beside the bed, peering into the darkness. There was nothing there, of course, but he dutifully looked around before standing back up. "See, there's nothing to be afraid of. You're safe and sound," he told his son, ruffling his hair affectionately. With that, he wished his son good night once more and turned to leave. However, as he reached for the door handle, he heard a strange sound, a low, guttural growling coming from his son's bed. Puzzled, the father turned back around, and to his horror, he saw his son lying under the bed, his eyes wide and wild with terror. "Dad, there's a monster on my bed," the boy whispered urgently. The father's heart raced as he looked towards his son's bed. There, in the darkness, he saw a pair of glowing red eyes and a faint outline of a monstrous shape. Fear gripped the father as he realized his worst nightmare had come true, his son was in grave danger. Summoning all of his courage, the father reached for a flashlight and shone it on the bed. To his utter horror, he saw the outline of a grotesque, gnarled creature, covered in fur and with razor-sharp teeth. Trembling with fear, the father tried to call out for help, but no sound came from his lips. It was as if the monster had stolen his voice, leaving him paralyzed and helpless. As he watched in terror, the monster slowly climbed down from the bed, its eyes fixed on the father and son. The father could hear its heavy breathing, its growls of hunger, and he knew that he had to act fast. Gathering all of his strength, the father lunged forward, trying to grab his son and pull him to safety. But it was too late. The monster pounced, its claws slicing through the air, and the father felt a searing pain in his chest as it struck him down. With his last breath, the father saw the monster drag his son away, its teeth sinking into the boy's flesh. He knew he had failed to protect his son from the horrors of the world, and that his own life had been forfeit in the process. The room fell silent as the monster and his prey disappeared into the night, leaving behind only the stench of death and the memory of unspeakable horror. The father's sacrifice would never be forgotten, but it would also never be enough to undo the evil that had been unleashed that night.